The field that doesn't end. I grew up on a farm in Iowa, corn and soybeans. The flat black dirt country where the fields run to the horizon in every direction and the sky is the biggest thing you have ever seen. I left for the city at 18 and did not look back. And for years I thought the unease I felt about home was just the ordinary thing. The kid who wanted out of a small place. It was not until my father got sick and I went back to help with the harvest, at 30, that I understood the unease had a source. And the source was the back 40. The field at the far edge of our land that my father never planted the same way as the others. And the rule he would raised me on without ever explaining. The rule I would forgotten in the city and remembered the hard way on an October night in the corn. The rule was simple, the way the deadliest rules always are. You do not go into the back field after dark. And if you are ever caught in any cornfield, when the light fails, you do not try to walk across it. You pick a row, you put your hand on the corn stalks to your right. And you follow that one row, never letting go, never crossing over, until you come out the end. You do not cut across. You do not take a shortcut toward the lights of the house. You follow the row. My father drilled this into me and my brother from the time we could walk. The way other parents teach: look both ways. Before you cross, follow the row. Never cut across the corn in the dark. I thought it was just farm safety, the way you can get disoriented in tall corn. Lose your sense of direction between walls of stalks higher than your head. It is much worse than that, and my father knew it was worse. And he spent his whole life keeping that one field, our back 40, planted in a particular way for a reason. He only told me the night before he died. But let me tell you what happened in the corn first. Because I lived it before I understood it. It was harvest, mid-October, and we were running behind because of my father's illness, working the fields late into the evenings to get the corn in before the weather turned. One evening I was out near the back 40, on the four-wheeler, checking the moisture on the far rows. And I lost track of the time the way you do when the work absorbs you. And when I looked up, the sun was already down behind the tree line and the light was going fast. That long blue Midwestern dusk that seems to last forever and then drops into dark all at once. I was maybe a quarter mile from the house. I could see the kitchen light. It would have taken me 10 minutes to walk straight across the back 40 to the yard. The four-wheeler had a dead battery, some loose connection, would not start, and I figured I would just hoof it across the field to the house and deal with the machine in the morning. I remember standing there at the edge of the corn for a moment, and feeling the back of my neck prickle, the way it does when someone's watching you, and looking down the long dark rows of the back 40. And some old instinct from childhood, some echo of my father's voice, said, do not go around, take the lane. The lane was the long way. 20 minutes following the gravel track around the edge of the field instead of 10 minutes straight across. And I almost took it. I want that on the record, that some part of me knew. But I was tired, and my father was dying in the house, and I wanted to get to him. And 10 minutes is 10 minutes. And I told that prickling instinct it was just a kid's fear of the dark. And I stepped into the corn. That is the whole tragedy of every rule like this. The careful voice is always quieter than the tired one. And the shortcut is always right there. And the field is counting on exactly that. I started across the corn. And here is the thing I need you to understand. Because it is the thing that still keeps Me up at night. I was walking toward the kitchen light. I could see it. It was right there, a warm yellow square. In the blue dark. Dead ahead of me through the rows. And I walked toward it, pushing through the corn stalks, cutting across the rows the way my father told me never to do. Because it was the obvious shortcut and I was a grown man from the city who'd forgotten the rule. And I walked for what should have been 10 minutes, and the light got no closer. I walked for 20. The light stayed exactly the same distance away, a warm yellow square always just ahead. Through the corn, and the corn went on and on. Rows and rows of it, far more rows than there were in the back 40. Which was 40 acres, which I should have crossed 3 times over by then. And the dark came down fully, and I stopped, and I looked back the way I would come. And there was no way I would come, just corn. Identical corn in every direction. Walls of dry rustling stalks higher than my head, and the kitchen light when I turned back toward it was gone. I want to describe the cornfield at night. Because most people have never been in one. And it is its own kind of horror before anything else happens. The corn at harvest is dry and dead, 8 feet tall, and it rustles, constantly. Even when there is no wind, a dry, whispering hiss from all directions at once. So that you can never tell if something is moving through it or if it is just the corn. You can see maybe 2 feet in any direction. The rows, when you are in them, all look identical, endless parallel corridors of stalks. And the sky overhead is just a strip of darkening blue between the tassels. You lose the horizon. You lose the sense of how big the field is. And the rustling fills your ears until you would swear you heard footsteps in it. Breathing in it, voices in it, and you can never be sure you did not. I told myself not to panic. I was a farm kid, even years gone. I knew you could get turned around in corn. I tried to use the rows, finally, too late, remembering my father's rule, putting my hand on the stalks to my right, and following the row. But the rows did not behave. I would follow a row and it would end, just stop, the corn giving way to a gap. And then start again offset, so that I could not keep a single row. Could not keep my hand on the same line of stalks. And every time I lost the row I would have to pick a new one, and I knew in my gut that the field was doing it on purpose. That the rows were rearranging themselves around me in the dark to keep me from doing the one thing that would get me out. My father's rule was follow the row and never cut across, and the field's whole effort, I understood, was to make sure I could never hold a row, to keep me cutting across. Turning, wandering, going deeper into a 40-acre field that had become, somehow, in the dark, much larger than 40 acres. That was when I saw the first scarecrow. We did not use scarecrows. No modern farm does. They do not work, and we had not had one on the place in my lifetime. But there it was, ahead of me in the corn. A tall figure on a post, arms spread. A sack head, slumped in the way scarecrows slump, and I came around it giving it a wide berth with my heart going hard. Telling myself it was some old thing left from decades back. And then I saw the second one. And the third. And I understood that they were not all on posts. Some of them were standing on the ground, between the rows. In the same slumped scarecrow posture. Head down, arms a little out. And they were placed all through the corn. Now, dozens of them, more the deeper I went. And I could not always tell, in the dark. And the rustling. Which ones were on posts and which ones were just standing there on their own, and once. When I passed close to one, I saw that under the slumped sack head there was a face. An old dried face. And I realized that some of the scarecrows in that field had once been people. People who had cut across the corn in the dark and never found a row to follow. And that the field kept them, posed them, planted them, and that I was being walked slowly toward an empty post. The closer ones were worse than the far ones, because the far ones I could pretend were posts and old burlap, and the close ones I could not. There was one I had to pass within arm's reach of, because the corn pressed me right up against it, and in the starlight I saw it clearly. A man in the rotted remains of overalls, the kind a farmer would have worn 50 years ago, his arms wired out to a crossbar. His head a leather thing the weather had made of his face, and his mouth was open. Frozen open, in the exact shape of a man who had been screaming for help in a field where no help was ever going to come. And as I edged past him I would swear on anything you like that his head turned, slow, dry, the leather creaking, to follow me, and that from somewhere in that open, screaming mouth came a sound, faint, a dry rasp. That might have been the wind in the corn, and might have been the word help. Ground down by 50 years of trying to say it. I did not stop to find out. But I understood then, fully, what the empty posts in the field were for. And I understood that the field was not trying to kill me out of malice. It was simply harvesting. I was a crop that had wandered in after dark, and it was bringing me in. The way we brought in the corn, patient and certain, toward a place where I would be wired up, and left to dry and dragged out to scare the next careless thing deeper into the rows. I do not know how long I was in the corn. Hours. The whole night, I think. I stopped trying to reach the house and just tried to survive. Tried to remember my father's voice. Follow the row, and finally, in the worst of it, when I was near to breaking, near to just sitting down in the dirt and giving up the way I think all the scarecrows had once given up, I made myself stop. I stood still. I closed my eyes so the identical corn would stop turning me around. And I felt for the planted rows with my feet. The little ridges of soil the planter leaves, the one thing about a field that does not move because it is pressed into the earth itself. And I found a furrow, and I got down low, below the worst of the rustling. And I put my hand flat on the side of one ridge and I followed it, on my hands and knees. In the dark, refusing to stand, refusing to look at the scarecrows, refusing to cut across no matter how much. The corn seemed to open invitingly to my left or right. Following one planted furrow with my hand pressed to the earth. And the field fought me. The rustling rose to a roar, though there was no wind. The scarecrows, I swear to you, moved at the edges of my vision, leaning in. And I felt the dry brush of cornstalks against my back that felt too much like fingers. And once something cold closed around my ankle in the dirt and I kicked it loose and kept crawling. Kept my hand on the furrow, kept following the one row. I crawled for what felt like miles, a 40-acre field, on my hands and knees in the dark. And then the corn ended. All at once, the way it does at the edge of a field. And I came out of the rows onto the grass. At the edge of our yard, into the open. Under the huge star-filled Iowa sky, and the kitchen light was right there, real this time, 50 feet away, and I crawled to it and pulled myself up the porch steps, and I have never in my life been so glad to feel open air around me. My father was awake. He was always awake near the end, the illness would not let him sleep. And he was sitting at the kitchen table when I came in, filthy and shaking. Dirt ground into my hands and knees. And he looked at me and he knew exactly what had happened, and his face went gray. Grayer than the illness had made it. He said, "You went into the back field. After dark. It was not a question." I said I would try to cut across. And he closed his eyes, and he said, "But you found a row. You followed a row out." I said yes, the furrows, on my hands and knees. And he nodded slowly and he said, "Good boy. Your grandfather taught me that. On your hands and knees if you have to. The furrows do not lie, the corn lies, the rows lie, the light lies. But the furrows are pressed into the ground and they go where they go and the field can't move them." And then he told me. That night, the night before he died, the thing he would never told me. The reason we kept that back 40. He said there had always been something in the back 40. Since before our family farmed the land. Since before it was farmed at all. He said the native people who'd been there first would not camp on that ground. And the first settlers who broke the prairie there had lost people to it. Walked out into the grass and never came back. And that when his own grandfather bought the land, an old man who'd farmed nearby had taken him aside and told him the rule. You can farm it. The field will give you good corn, the best corn on the place, year after year. Blacker dirt and fatter ears than any other field you own. But it takes a payment. It takes the ones who cut across it in the dark. And the only protection, the only rule, is the rows. You plant it in dead straight rows. You keep the rows true. You teach your children to follow the rows. And never cut across in the dark. And the field will be satisfied with the ones foolish enough to break the rule. And it will leave the rest of you alone. And it will make you rich in corn. My father had kept that bargain his whole life. He would planted the back 40 in rows truer than any field in the county. He would kept us out of it after dark. And it had given us the best corn on the farm every single year. And it had never taken one of us, because we followed the rows. I am dying, he said to me that night. And you are going to have to decide what to do with this place. And I am telling you the truth so you can decide knowing it. You can sell it. But whoever you sell it to, you have to tell them the rule. And most people won't believe you. And the field will take its payment from them and their children, and that'll be on you. Or you can keep it, and farm it, and keep the rows true. And teach your own kids follow the row. And the field will make you a good living. And only ever take the careless ones who probably have come to a bad end anyway. That is the choice my grandfather left me. And his grandfather left him. And now I am leaving it to you. I am sorry. I never figured out a third way. My father died the next morning. We buried him on a clear October day with the corn standing gold all around the cemetery. And I have not sold the farm, and I have not kept it, not really. I leased the other fields to a neighbor and I leave the back 40 fallow, unplanted. A 40-acre square of weeds and volunteer corn that I will not put a crop in and will not let anyone else work. I do not know if leaving it fallow satisfies it or starves it or angers it. I do not know if a field that has been fed for 150 years can be weaned. I only know that I drive out there. Sometimes, in the daylight, always in the daylight. And I stand at the edge of the back 40. And I look at the weeds rustling where the rows used to be, and I feel it looking back, patient, hungry, waiting for me to make up my mind. And I have not yet found the courage to do anything at all. If you ever find yourself lost in a Cornfield as the light goes. Here is what my father gave me, and his grandfather gave him, and I am giving you. Do not walk toward the lights of the house. The light lies. Do not trust the rows. The rows lie, they will rearrange themselves to keep you wandering. Get down low, get your hand on the planted furrow pressed into the earth. The one thing in that field that cannot move, and you follow that one furrow. On your hands and knees if you have to. And you do not cut across. No matter what opens up to either side of you. No matter what you see standing in the corn. No matter how close the house seems if you would just go straight. The ones who go straight become scarecrows. The ones who follow the furrow come home.